himself to be an American. He's gone. He's been deported. Other areas of injustice. I'll get to perhaps one of the big ones in a moment. But as you think of the stories of injustice, my deepest hope for you in our time together today is that you know that this is not a 50-year history. When we saw 42, the story about Jackie Robinson, at one point he was up to bat and he was being verbally accosted with horrible words that no human being should ever hear, time and time again, repeatedly. And what struck me was, as the person from the other team shouted, "You all right? You don't look all right." And it brought me to 25 years ago. A week and a half ago, my children and I got to be with one of my best friends, whose name is Jonathan. Jonathan and I were friends during seminary and a good chunk of my 20s. Loved each other very much. And he he's preached at David's in my wedding. We were traveling between New York City and Princeton, New Jersey. And there was a place where there was a seatbelt enforcement. Little, you know, when they set up those temporary things and the blinking lights, so we had to pull over. And in New Jersey, you have to have registration stickers. You have to make sure that your emissions are fine. Has anybody lived in a state like that? California does it. Is anybody really grateful we don't do that in Michigan? It's probably really good for the environment, I'm really sure, but it's such a pain. So I knew license was good, registration was good, insurance was good, I had my little stickers, everything is fine. I always wear my seatbelt. Like when I was a high schooler, I was really boring. I would never drive that big old green Mercury wagon unless everybody had their seatbelts on. And they're like, "You're not the boss of me." Oh, yes, I am. I'm not driving unless your seatbelt's on. So we pulled over, and Jonathan is a very dark-skinned black man. And there were 7 state troopers who just leaned on their car and they would not let us go. And the guy would come in and shine his flashlight on my face for almost 40 minutes in my eyes. "You all right?" And then he would turn the light over to Jonathan's face. "You sure don't look all right." "Officer, may we go? You've let several people go." "Oh, in a little bit." "Officer, is there anything you need?" "Nope, just waiting." "Can I help provide any paperwork?" "Nope." And he would walk over and they would all laugh. Jonathan became furious. He was going to step out and let them know what he really thought. And they just kept glaring at him, and I said, "You know what? I have no idea what's going to happen on this dark road." And we waited. Again. "You all right?" Light right in my eye, shining the beam over to Jonathan. "You sure don't look all right." That, beloved, is America. Don't think it's isolated. Let's think about Grand Rapids for a moment. Did you know that 87% of our black boys in 3rd and 4th grade do not read above grade level? 87%. I got that number from the superintendent. So the reason that these letters are so important, and I implore you, please, between now and Tuesday, to bless yourself. If you don't use the internet, go to the library. You heard the letter that brought the letter from Birmingham Jail in its entirety. You have only heard a small part of the letter from Birmingham Jail. But this injustice still exists. And it cannot be okay for any of us that our children can't read the way they're supposed to. And the millisecond that we say, "Why don't their parents spend time with their children like we do? Why don't, and put the onus on their parents and do not put the onus on our laps, means that we have not heard the enormity of what Dr. King says in this letter and what he fought and died for. My passions are fairly clear, I would think, and I'm grateful for the time as an acting minister that I've had to be in this place. It is an amazing gift. But Fountain Street gets to pick what happens next. As the superintendent and I spoke, something like raising reading scores is fairly low-hanging fruit. Who here reads? See, you laugh, but this is the challenge. Do you know how many of my older white members have come to me quietly and said, Pastor Ruth, I had to leave school and fight and stay on the farm because my daddy died, and I never finished past 9th grade. I learned quickly that I needed to preach, and if I used big words, that I had to explain them. We can tutor. We can say, where are the resources that that we could give to schools? There are amazing possibilities. So, as we go into this day, let me close with the words from Dr. King. Perhaps I've once again been too optimistic. Is organized religion too inextricably bound to the status quo to save our nation and the church? Perhaps I must turn my faith to the inner spiritual church, the church within the church. And again, I'm thankful to God that noble souls from the ranks of organized religions have broken loose from the paralyzing chains of conformity and joined us as active partners in the struggle. Before closing, I feel impelled to mention one other point in your statement that's troubled me profoundly. You warmly commended the Birmingham police force from keeping order and preventing violence. I doubt that you would have so warmly commended the police force if you had seen the dogs sinking their teeth into unarmed, nonviolent Negroes. It's true that the police have exercised a degree of discipline. In this sense, they've conducted themselves. But for what purpose? To preserve the evil system of segregation. But now I must affirm that it is just as wrong, or perhaps even more so, to use moral means to preserve immoral ends. And then he closes his letter, wishing them well, apologizing if he's overstated anything, and then he says, let us all hope that the dark clouds of racial prejudice will soon pass away and the deep fog of misunderstanding will be lifted from our fear-drenched communities. In some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty. Yours in the cause for peace and brotherhood, Martin Luther King, Jr. So in a minute, we're going to sing Precious Lord, Take My Hand. When Fred and I were talking about hymns, very sensitive to the different religious perspectives in this wonderful house of prayer for all people. And as Fred said, well, you know, invite them to understand the history of it. And I go, oh, okay. So the words are touching and kept him in the midst of times of sorrow. It's only 2 verses. So before we sing, I invite you to join with me in prayer. Holy God, it's so tough to hear hard words. And God, when we see things like the Ruby Bridges movie or the Jackie Robinson story in 42, or we hear the letter from Birmingham jail, God, we have a choice. And it's so easy to say, wow, we've come a really far way. We even have a black president. God, give us the eyes of grace that the 8 clergy did not have, to see the places of injustice that remain even now. And in your mercy, may we live with our mouths and our spirits, our minds, our souls, our actions, the ancient invitation from all religions to indeed love our neighbor as ourselves. Amen. I invite you to stand, and we'll sing 199, Precious Lord, Take My Hand.